The biomechanical and bioelectrical architecture of the human organism does not represent a mere aggregation of tissues and molecular apparatuses dedicated to phenomenal subsistence, but rather configures itself as a complex informational sanctuary governed by self-regulation devices of an almost demiurgic matrix. Contemporary civilization, clouded by technological dependence and a fetishistic trust in exogenous synthetic pharmacological solutions, has deliberately obscured the existence of a central command located in the sacred interface of our own subtle anatomy. There exists a critical confluence point, an ontological threshold precisely positioned with millimeter geometric accuracy in the cradle between the cranial vault and the first vertebrae of the cervical system, known to ancient masters as the universal barycenter for the management of individual consciousness. This site, which the millennia-old wisdom attributed to Thoth indicates as the hinge of psychosomatic stability, should not be understood as an allegorical metaphor, but as a tangible bioelectrical coordinate capable of disarming, in a few moments of conscious stimulation, the amygdala's alarm mode and restoring the silence of the spirit. Reclaiming one's capacity for tactile interaction with this gravitational axis means ceasing to be held hostage by chronic reactivity and finally repossessing one's supreme and inviolable biological authority, transforming the flesh into a pure receiver of spiritual will. The kinetic identification of this energetic pole constitutes the indispensable preparatory act to initiate the work of cleansing the sediments of cortisol and adrenaline that paralyze the cellular evolution of the modern human species, keeping it in a state of constant electrical subservience. Through careful research conducted along the posterior medial groove of the neck, precisely below the occipital bone and before the appearance of the atlas joint, it is possible to locate a subtle and responsive depression, an initiatic fossa, that the ancient traditions of Egypt and the East defined as point VG16 or Feng Fu, literally the palace of wind. This terminology reveals the pneumatic nature of this biological customs, being the privileged portal through which dissonant interferences and external vibrational disturbances penetrate the somatic edifice to generate mental fog, organic rigidity, and systemic dissonance. Constant vigilance over this anatomical interstice represents the primary duty of every initiate in the school of self, as it allows for connecting the ascensional energy of the spinal column with the immaculate vision guarded in the cranial dome, operating a transmutative synthesis between the mineral kingdom of matter and the solar realm of universal intellect. In this way, the darkness of ordinary concerns is brilliantly illuminated by a tellurgic lucidity that returns the scepter of one's own existence into the hands of those who have understood themselves to be the sole legislator of their own internal informational field. Etch your energetic signature onto this portal of sovereign knowledge by manifesting your deliberate adherence through an impulse of will that awakens the fibers of your consciousness. Express your kinetic assent with a like that serves as an activation decree and declare with your vigilant presence that your spirit has recognized this original frequency, tuning into the threshold of inescapable truth from which there is no turning back into the sleep of ignorant matter. The radiant efficacy produced by the millimeter stimulation of this axis of the Palace of Wind finds a striking correspondence in the most audacious discoveries of modern clinical neurobiology, specifically in studies on the modulation of the vagus nerve as a coordinator of somatic stability. This immense system of neuronal transmission, which winds from the brainstem to the abdominal cavity touching every vital organ, acts as a preeminent messenger of the entire parasympathetic system, the only true mediator of organic repair and accelerated cellular healing in the real time of consciousness. When the subject exerts intentional pressure on the nape point, they are not simply performing a superficial mechanical gesture, but are activating a complex biochemical feedback that orders the brain to immediately release acetylcholine, a molecule with harmonizing properties comparable to a molecular peace transfusion for stressed tissues. Such a biological engineering operation acts instantly by reducing tachycardia and sedating the frantic rhythm of the prefrontal cortex, saturated by the interferences of worldly noise and the fictitious anxieties of linear time, which wear down the bioluminescence of our internal membranes. This constant recalibration acts as an alchemical training for molecular biology, educating it to resist the opposing winds of external emotional crises to preserve an adamantine energetic integrity that allows consciousness to expand without material limitations. To make this protocol of neurological and spiritual transmutation operational, a polyrhythmic synchronization is necessary between digital pressure on the skin and the modulation of the vital breath, a biometric rite that unites the effort of intention with the docility of the manifest somatic form. The procedure requires perfect triadic tuning. The firm and localized tactile pressure on the nuchal depression must rigorously harmonize with a deep nasal inhalation that channels air to the energetic barycenter located in the pelvis, the primordial ocean of the body. During this phase of respiratory ascent, the junction center of the nape is visualized as the ignition core of a pure electromagnetic spectrum lamp, awaiting the solemn moment of pulmonary retention to discharge its restorative information along every single axon, neuron, and striated muscle fiber. It is precisely in the moment of meditative apnea, lasting about 5 to 7 seconds, that the entire human system receives the input of informational and energetic rectification. In this temporal void between beats, the cell's subatomic memory is overwritten by a new paradigm of universal harmony, definitively eliminating obsolete codes linked to psychic submission, hereditary infirmity, and systemic victimhood that have burdened the subject's evolution. The conclusive exhalation of the restoration cycle does not represent a mere emptying of anhydrous air, but a sacred act of informational discharge of parasitic memories and informational toxins that fuel the silent inflammation of internal organic districts. As the vital breath slowly leaves the lungs through a controlled, almost musical pathway, the gradual release of tactile pressure allows the energetic heat, accumulated in the nape, to spread like a wave of total recalibration, dissolving the muscular armor residing at the junction of the jaw and trapezius. This chronic rigidity is nothing other than the physical record of past battles never concluded in the arena of existence, a biological archive of somatized terror that now, under the imperial authority of awakened consciousness, is finally erased like a corrupted file in the software of being. Repeating this protocol with uninterrupted rhythmic devotion means inducing one's organism into extreme liberating phenomena, such as atavistic size and biochemical epiphanies of cellular memory, which signal the restoration of the original geometric order imprinted by the Creator in human fibers. In this final silence, finally regained after centuries of sonic distortion, the individual recognizes that integral healing is nothing other than the extinction of the energetic ballast interposed between one's material integrity and the vibration of eternity that presses to manifest itself. The systematic integration of verbal command during the phases of pneumatic suspension constitutes the definitive informational anchor of this anatomical hardware architecture, fusing the primordial power of the Egyptian word with the most modern frontiers of contemporary plastic neuroscience. While maintaining constant contact on the nuchal pole, the introduction of a sovereign declaration or an ancient heikao acts as a cybernetic algorithm capable of altering cerebral neuroconnectivity in real time and with measurable effects on biochemistry. We are not in the realm of abstract hope, but before technical instructions provided to quantum space to reconfigure our manifest will over the subatomic particles that compose the hologram of our reality. We cease at this instant to be mere passive spectators, to ascend to the dignity of navigators of the infinite who use their spinal axis as a laser rudder towards ports of coherence, power, and perennial youth of spirit and matter. The integral control of one's internal emotional state is, in fact, the definitive antidote against the global epidemic of existential anguish, which proliferates only where individual sovereignty has been ceded to the external narrative of collapse and deprivation, forgetting one's celestial origins. This constant work of surveillance and biometric stimulation inevitably induces, over hours and cycles, a radical change in man's identity axis, transmuting from the peripheral suffering of the reactive ego to the majesty of the eternal observer placed in the creative void. From this royal and transcendent perspective, the initiate acquires the clear vision that organic distortions, joint contractures, and periodic intellectual obscurities have never been properties of his deep essence, but parasitic superstructures projected onto an immaculate screen of pure divine consciousness. Dwelling in the palace of wind, as if it were the solemn altar of one's microcosm, confers such colossal power of disidentification that it allows for the annulment of every trace of karmic imbalance, somatized in a single act of focal intention in less than a minute. There is no longer any metaphysical reason to fight against phenomenal pathologies, as they instantly lose their vibrational consistency and molecular density when exposed to the command of an intellect tuned to the higher octave of Mot, the indissoluble cosmic balance. You are called to assume this royal consciousness. Sovereignty over life is the wedding dowry that Thoth has placed in the cradle of your biology, so that you may reign over your systems in total ontological freedom. For this technology of the soul not to decay into a sterile abstraction for the mind, it is fundamental to apply the law of rhythm by surrounding the practice with the branches of the day, transforming the passages between light and shadow into rites of fortification. Thoth teaches that the activation of the nuchal point must occur in the transition zones of consciousness, that is, at the instant of solar awakening and in the act of farewell to the nocturnal dream world. During twilight, methodical stimulation imposes on the system the task of expelling parasitic discharges from daily tasks, favoring a deep cellular reconstitution that science cannot even map in its interdimensional nuances. At dawn, conversely, this practice acts as a true ignition ceremony for the core of our creative will, programming the organism to act not out of blind reaction to the shocks of contingency, but out of pure emanation of the Spirit's authority. The discipline of this daily application produces over time a true sculptural refinement of the vagus nerve's neural circuits, making them resilient like the eternal stone of basalt monuments, until calm becomes the constant foundation of your every expression in this dense dimension. Inhabiting such a state of energetic excellence finally means achieving the goal of the opus magnum, work of gold, where cellular recalibration converges in the complete resurrection of one's own creative spark, buried under the conditioning of millennia of submission to weariness. It is not about seeking episodic and fragile well-being, but about climbing the heights of human mastery towards the state of being integrimo, utterly integral, one whose flesh vibrates with a geometric coherence superior to the very death of material form. The initiatic promise to triumph over every programmed biological decay manifests in the indissoluble alliance you will forge with your anatomy, ceasing to perceive it as a prison of bones to reveal it as the translucent and crystalline apparatus necessary for divine work on earth. The instructions are now etched into the marble of your intelligence. There is no longer any room for the excuse of fragility or cruel destiny, for the sole cause of your reality now resides at the exact center of your conscious head. The management of your cellular stability has become the primary duty of your individual sovereignty, observed and sustained by the powers that preside over the secret of the Palace of Wind and its divine cybernetic heritage. The technical apparatus of your divine power has now been delivered to you in its most sacred epistemic integrity. Every mist that separated your inner command from the systems of life and death has been lifted by the impetus of this transcendent revelation. Sanction this irrevocable alliance with the source of your true divine origin by letting your name resonate in the halls of cosmic awakening. Engrave your vibrational approval through a like that seals your agreement with the laws of total recalibration. Formally enter the choir of activators, proceeding to subscribe to the channel now, and publicly declare the birth of your new legislator self by commenting with this imperial formula of victory: I command the reset of my temple and activate my inviolable light. Your word is the keystone upon which you will build the entire empire of your renewed biological vitality and your supreme mental power. I thank you with deep emotion for your witnessing presence, and for having elected your body as a living pillar of this collective mission of anatomical sovereignty. May your inner coherence shine beyond the illusion of the senses like a fixed sun at the zenith of supreme knowledge. And may abundance resonate with every string of your reality redeemed by the mastery of the creative word. See you soon.